In the previous video, we have established that Gog and Magog almost certainly are located in the Caucasus region, but before you jump into rushing conclusions, let's examine more historical references to help us decide the starting point of our scientific expedition in quest of Gog and Magog. Let's scroll through related references from the pages of the Syrian origin Christian legend concerning Alexander. An exploit by Alexander, the son of Philip the Macedonian, showing how he went forth to the ends of the world, and made a gate of iron, and shut it in the face of the north wind, that the Huns might not come forth to spoil the countries, from the manuscripts in the house of the archives of the kings of Alexandria. And Alexander looked towards the west, and he found a mountain that descends, and its name was the Great Muzzas, could be Mount Ararat in Turkey, which was called Muzzas, which Gilgamesh was believed to have climbed. Several Gilgamesh legends became Alexander legends, just as the Moses myth of the baby set adrift in a basket to escape a massacre of children became a King Arthur and Mordred myth. And the troops descended it and came out upon Mount Claudia, and ate bread there. Then they went down to the source of the Euphrates, and they found that it came forth from a cave. And they came to Haluras, where the Tigris goes forth like the stream that turns a mill, and they ate bread in Haluras. And they departed from thence, and went to the river Kalath. And they descended the mountain which is called Ramath, where there is a watchtower. And Alexander and his troops stood upon the top of the mountain, and saw the four quarters of the heavens. And Alexander said, Let us go forth by the way to the north. And they came to the confines of the north, and entered Armenia and Azerbaijan and Inner Armenia. And Alexander passed through all these places. And he went and passed Mount Muzzas, and entered a plain which is Bahileta, and he went and encamped by the gate of a great mountain. Now there was a road across it by which great merchants entered the inner countries, and by it did Alexander encamp. He sends heralds out, requesting that 300 men advanced in years come to meet him. These men tell him that the land belongs to Turbalak, king of Persia. Alexander said to them, How far does the mountain descend in that direction? They answered him, This mountain extends without a break, passing by the sea of Beth-Katraye, and goes on and comes to an end in out Persia near India. Alexander said, This mountain is higher and more terrible than all the mountains which I have seen. The old men, natives of the country, said to the king, Yea, by your majesty, my lord the king, neither we nor our fathers have been able to march one step upon it, and men do not ascend it either on that side or on this, for it is the boundary which God has sent between us and the nations within it. Alexander said, Who are the nations within this mountain upon which we are looking? The natives of the country said, They are Huns. He said to them, Who are their kings? The old men said, Gog and Magog and Nowell, the kings of the sons of Japheth. A long list of names follows. When Alexander had heard what the old men said, he marveled greatly at the great sea which surrounded all creation. And Alexander said to his troops, Do you desire that we should do something wonderful in this land? They said to him, As thy majesty commands we will do. The king said, Let us make a gate of brass and close up this breach. His troops said, Thy majesty's will is our commands we. And Alexander commanded and fetched 3,000 smiths, workers in iron, and 3,000 men, workers in brass. And they put down brass and iron, and kneaded it as a man kneads when he works clay. Then they brought it and made a gate, the length of which was 12 cubits and its breadth 8 cubits. And they made a lower threshold from mountain to mountain, the length of which was 12 cubits. And they hammered it into the rocks of the mountains, and it was fixed in with brass and iron. And King Alexander fetched an engraver and inscribed upon the gate, "The Huns shall go forth and conquer the countries of the Romans and of the Persians, and shall cast arrows and shall return and enter their own land." Also I have written that, at the conclusion of 826 years, the Huns shall go forth by the narrow way which goes forth opposite Aloras, whence the Tigris goes forth like the stream which turns a mill, and they shall make the earth tremble by their going forth. Details are given of the fall of the gate, which shall herald the end of the world. And when the Huns have gone forth, as God has commanded, the kingdoms of the Huns and the Persians and the Arabs, the 24 kingdoms that are written in this book, shall come from the ends of the heavens and fall upon one another, and the earth shall melt through the blood and dung of men. Here is another version from an Islamic perspective. Then he continued his way until he came to the place where the sun riseth. And he found it to rise on certain people unto whom we had not given anything wherewith to shelter themselves therefrom. Thus it was, and we comprehended with our knowledge the forces that were with him. And he prosecuted his journey from south to north, until he came between the two mountains, beneath which he found certain people, who could scarce understand what was said. And they said, "O Zulkarnain, verily Gog and Magog waste the land. Shall we therefore pay thee tribute, on condition that thou build a rampart between us and them? The power wherewith my Lord had strengthened me is better than your tribute, but assists me strenuously, and I will set a strong wall between you and them. Bring me iron in large pieces, until it fills up the space between the two sides of these mountains." And he said to the workmen, "Blow with your bellows, until it make the iron red hot as fire." And he said further, "Bring me molten brass that I may pour upon it." Wherefore, when this wall was finished, Gog and Magog could not scale it, neither could they dig through it. And Zulkarnain said, "This is a mercy from my Lord, but when the prediction of my Lord shall come to be fulfilled, he shall reduce the wall to dust. And the prediction of my Lord is true." And I found there also many people that ate the flesh of human beings and drank the blood of animals and beasts like water. For their dead they buried not, but ate. And when I beheld such utterly wicked nations, and feared that through such a diet they might pollute the earth, I besought the power above and proceeded with force against them, and most of them I put to the sword, and their land I reduced to subjection. 22 were the kings over them, and I pressed pursuit of them with force until they fortified themselves in two great mountains called the breasts of the north, which have no other exit or entrance than between those two great mountains, towering in height as they do above the clouds of heaven, and extending like two walls on the right and on the left as far as the great sea beneath the Mzozai, the Arctos, or the Bear Star, as far as the Arctic Ocean and the land of darkness. And I thought of all manner of contrivances to prevent them from issuing forth from the great mountains into which they had been driven. Now the entrance between the great mountains measures 46 royal cubits. Again therefore I importuned Providence above, and my prayer was heard. For he commanded the two mountains, and they rocked and walked about in rivalry with each other a distance of 12 cubits. And there I constructed gates of brass, and the same gates I overspread with a sauceton, that neither fire nor steel nor any device whatsoever might be able to unbronze the gates. The fire, when brought near it, goes out, and steel crumbles. And outside of these most terrible gates I set up another structure of stones, each having the width of 11 cubits, the height of 20 cubits, and the length of 60 cubits, that nothing might avail to master such gates, which I called the Caspian gates. 22 kings I shut in there. And the names of the nations are Magog, Kinakifalwa, Nanoi. My personal conviction is that there is a cave somewhere in the Caucasus region in one of those mountains that may somehow lead to Gog and Magog whereabouts. Could this cave be a sort of a portal that leads to another dimension? Subscribe and stay tuned for our next video. Feel free to like this video and leave a comment, as we'd love to know your thoughts.